The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hey, greetings, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit, part of the Craig Foley Show here on Deadline Detroit. Very glad to have everybody with us today. We've got a big show, so I have a big group of people who are here to help us out today. Of course, as always, I have Nancy Derringer and Alan Lengel, both contributors to Deadline Detroit. They are basically... They are Deadline Detroit. I mean, they do all this stuff over there.
Oh, come on. Don't sell Violet short.
Well, that's true. That's true. There are a number of people that outvote over there. But anyway, the two of them are with us every week, and I appreciate it very much. Also, we have right now, messing with his camera, my friend Greg Bowens, longtime PR man, of course, former mayoral spokesperson, a longtime civil rights activist as well. Greg, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Brendan Walsh is with us today. Of course, he's a business consultant and a former member of the Grosse Pointe Public School Board. Glad to have you aboard today because we are going to be talking a bit about school board politics in a little bit. Thanks, Brendan, for being here.
Happy to be back. Thanks, Craig.
All right. And of course, my friend Saeed Khan, a very frequent guest on the program. And of course, he is a senior lecturer in Near East and Asian studies at Wayne State University, among many other accolades that he has collected over the years. And he is joining us fresh from his visit to Let It Rip last night on Fox 2 with Hewell Perkins. You got in about a minute's worth of stuff at the most, Saeed, but it was a crowded field there last night. So I understand, given their time constraints, they probably don't have as much time as we do to go through what is happening in Afghanistan. Saeed, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Great to be back again.
All right. Yeah. Really, really tragic day in Afghanistan. Yesterday, it looks like ISIS-K, which is operating in Afghanistan, is responsible for a bombing that killed 13 U.S. soldiers, injured another 15 more, I believe, and dozens of innocent civilians in Afghanistan. A horrific attack. And Saeed, I want to focus on this one for you for just a little bit, because I want to say I was not surprised this happened. ISIS wanted to make a bold statement, show that they are here. This was, I don't want to say an easy target for them, but it certainly wasn't something that was unexpected, at least from my perspective.
Well, the intel had already been predicting this. The U.S. knew about it. The problem was that the U.S. really didn't have that much rapport with the Taliban, which was in charge of security of Kabul airport. And when you don't have that kind of credibility with the people who are running the show, doesn't exactly make things easy. I think it's also important to realize that if there is a group that right now is quite anxious about what happened, it is the Taliban. Because what this showed was that despite the fact that they now are the de facto leaders of Afghanistan, they are a little bit inept at being able to provide security, which emboldened not only ISIS-K, but also the Afghan opposition that is probably salivating right now at the Taliban's ineptitude.
Well, looking at this, I mean, we're leaving Afghanistan, and there's no obviously turning that around at this point in time, despite what President Biden had to say yesterday about finding those responsible and getting them. That's going to be some sort of special forces operation at some point down the road. We have no idea when that's going to happen. But, I think this is just a precursor to what's to come in Afghanistan. This is not going to be a simple thing where the Taliban just takes over the entirety of the country. Are we on the brink of another civil war there?
We are. And it's going to be messy enough as it is. It's going to be even worse if external forces try to go ahead and put their thumb on the scale. There's already reports of the French, who never miss a moment to find a way into some imbroglio that we then have to bail them and ourselves out of. Think Vietnam. Meeting with the Northern Alliance. And that group is not necessarily one that has a mandate or even wields enough influence within Afghanistan. But to have Western powers then take an opportunistic and an ambitious look. I mean, Macron's only real motivations for doing this are two. One is he wants to look and act tough when it comes to his impending re-election bid next year in France. And the other is to mollify French defense contractors. I mean, if you want to look at the numbers, over the last 20 years, I think it was Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, their share values went up 1,230%.
Wow.
As a result of war.
I mean, I think you could make that argument for just about any defense contractor that's out there right now, because for 20 years we've been doing this kind of thing. Trillions of dollars that have been spent here. And I put down a list of casualties yesterday in a Facebook thread that I was looking at, because understandably people are angry about this bombing yesterday. But I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit fatigued at people fundraising off of this, which they have been doing in the last couple of days, saying, if you elect me to Congress, this will never happen again. Yeah, right. Good luck with that. Terrorist attacks happen under every president's watch. They were likely going to continue for a long time in the future. There's no defeating this permanently. You can try to minimize this, but people are sitting there saying that this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I put down a list of how many people have died in the 20 years of Afghanistan, our involvement in Afghanistan. And yes, we have lost thousands of soldiers, but if you look at the Afghan population itself, how many civilians have died? How many Afghani soldiers have died in this war? It is just an atrocious number. And I never heard anybody worrying about any of this for the last 20 years.
Dropping a drone on a wedding party that killed 100 people isn't exactly one of our finest hours. But what you have is, and I'll give an example. This morning I was listening to a radio station in town, an AM radio station that tends to traffic in rather boisterous voices from the right.
What could that be?
You can say their name.
The fading voice of the Great Lakes.
WJR.
There you go. And it had a congresswoman from the region, Lisa McClain, and I suppose not surprised by how intellectually incurious and shallow she was. But I mean, if this is really then the kind of, first of all, quote unquote leadership that we have, and second of all, these are the so-called voices that the voice of the Great Lakes wants to put on to educate people. I mean, she says, we got to do something. We got to send more people in there and we got to do something. That's not exactly Cartesian in its approach. And to go ahead and then make the sale and capitalize and exploit people's emotions at a very raw, nerve time for us here is not going to help. And if we take a look at all of the times when America has intervened by tugging on the heartstrings of the American public, it's never gone well.
And so you can correct me. I mean, my impression is, and I think a lot of people's impression was, initially the administration bungled this. They didn't anticipate losing Kabul. But it seems like they've done a fairly decent recovery under the circumstances now that they have they don't have the control that they wish they had. But I mean, it seemed it's so naive for people to say, just keep pouring in people there. Like, let's send more targets for ISIS. People don't understand. And people are so angry now, like, oh my God, this would have never happened under Trump. There wouldn't have been these suicide bombings, when in fact, the suicide bombers can mix within the crowds there, can mix within Kabul. I mean, it's impossible to have the level of security that people expect that they would have. It's unrealistic.
When you have crowds of people pushing against these gates to get into the airfield, I mean, how would you even spot a guy with a suicide vest under his clothes?
Remember, I mean, Biden has helped evacuate 100,000 people.
Right.
It's irresponsibility that the media isn't really focusing on that. Second of all, you mentioned Alan Trump. Trump had every opportunity to allow people into the United States under the special immigrant visa program. But Stephen Miller was abjectly against any Afghans coming to the country. So there was really no ability for Biden to do anything but to take on this avalanche of people at the end to come in.
These same people, though, that are hypercritical of this operation, and there are things to nitpick on this one. There are things to sit there and say we could have done better, and there's no denying that. But at the same time, the logistical feat that they're pulling off right now, even with the attacks, they've got flights that are going out right now as we speak. People still coming to the airport to leave the country. It's pretty incredible if you think about it that way. But these same people who are saying we need to do more for these people that helped us, but hell, don't bring them here. They're saying, right. Oh, we can't have them in the United States because I'm trying to remember who I saw a tweet from the other day. I think it was Tucker Carlson said something along the lines of how many terrorists did we let into the United States today on Biden's watch? And it's like, these are the people that helped us. It's just the politics of this, getting out of a war is always ugly. There is no way to get around it. I mean, it's going to be nasty, especially when you are leaving the way that we are.
I want to say something.
Please,
here.
Greg. Thank you.
Let's not act brand new to these kind of situations. Whenever you evacuate, whenever you leave a region after having participated in a war, it's rare that we leave a region or a country stabilized. And we knew that this kind of thing was coming. And so no matter how it happened, it was going to look ugly. And I don't give Tucker Carlson or the rest of those, talking head jerks any kind of credence at all on this situation. And I think that the reality is that it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
And I don't see how we get around that at all. I mean, this is what it looks like. And don't forget, it wasn't that long ago when all the papers, the Afghanistan papers came out that was put out by the Washington Post that showed that across 4 administrations, people had been lying to us, Americans, about the war, the conduct of the war, the cost of the war, the things that were going on. And so, I'm saying we can't act brand new about this. And I feel bad for the people that helped us. But, we grabbed as many people that we could get out of Vietnam when we left. And this is a repeat of that. I mean, there have been times in history where we just said, forget it, we're out, and don't try and grab anybody. So,
you know what? We talk about 4 administrations, really. I mean, for all the bungling that may have been done, particularly in the beginning of this, you got to give Biden credit for pulling the trigger and saying, we're out of here. We are going to do this. The thing is, it's really 3 administrations. I mean, Biden, as maybe as part of the Obama administration, takes some responsibility. But for this administration, from the get-go, it's been, we're getting out of there. So it's not really the policy of the 4th administration here.
I'd actually go so
far. It's the responsibility of the 4th administration.
It is the responsibility.
It's responsibility.
Absolutely.
I'd say it goes actually all the way back to Carter. Right. I mean, it was actually Brzezinski, Carter's national security advisor, who was salivating over the chance to block the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And then he was also, of course, pushing for Walesa in Poland. So this was going to be, and I apologize for the 70s reference, a Malachi crunch.
I remember that. Happy days. That was important stuff.
Yep.
Well, can't we take it all the way back to, a couple hundred years ago when the British drew the lines creating Afghanistan in the first place? I mean, we have shirked our responsibility as a global community to act in a responsible manner to all the people that live in Afghanistan. And I think we continue that today.
Well, that was a question I wanted to ask Saeed actually about. I mean, yes, there are technically borders for Afghanistan, but given, the tribal nature of the politics and the regionalism that it does exist within that single country, I mean, they have resisted unified rule forever. I mean, those borders are they're not really respected. I mean, between Turkmenistan and everything else. And I mean, people seem to be able to move about and do what they want to do. And it's about people as opposed to lines.
Well, there's that. And then also the way that we view the people that think about it. For nearly 20 years, the U.S. didn't want to talk to the Taliban at all. and were propping up a regime which proved to be maniacally inept in being able to do anything. And this is one of those problems that when you get a bunch of city slickers, former World Bank experts like Ashraf Ghani, who say, hey, pick me, coach, I can go ahead and do this, inside the Beltway suffocation, they have no idea about how Afghanistan is a rural area. It's a frontier area. And then it's too little too late to bring in the Taliban at the end. For them, they knew the lay of the land. They had a lot more respectability among 99% of the population that didn't live in Kabul or in other city centers. And we do this time and time again. We did this in Iraq by saying right off the bat, we're not going to bring in any former members of the Ba'ath Party. We're not going to be bringing in anybody from the hinterland or the frontier. We're going to set the table. Well, then if the food has a bit of E. coli and salmonella, which it invariably does, don't be surprised if everybody's puking around the table.
You know, one of the things that we don't seem to talk about when we talk about Afghanistan and our forays into the Middle East is the money part of it. The Bush people early on, man, it seemed like a straight up money grab. You know, what's that company here? That guy, Betsy DeVos's brother.
Blackwater.
Yeah,
such a swell guy he is, charging people thousands of dollars to get on a chartered flight out of Afghanistan right now. Ass. You're an ass, Eric
money
Prince.
to the end, baby. That's what America's all about.
Squeeze every last dime out of this thing he can.
I saw the comments on the comments on the Deadline Detroit Facebook page are so piquant sometimes. And, there were people there saying, I would consider that a small price to pay to get out of the country, a country that was collapsing like this. And it's like, how many people in Afghanistan do you think actually have that much money?
Well, per person. Per person. So you want to get your family of four.
So if you want a family, well,
$25,000. I mean, it's like
four, right? Exactly. I mean, that's like a life savings kind of deal. But
it's ridiculous.
It's not for them. It's for their American cousins and family who do have money to pay for their ticket and get them on a plane here, or in England, or in whatever country.
It's going to be extra if you need to be extracted from your home and brought to the airport. So,
and they've got security people to do it.
Yeah, he's a billionaire. He could afford to do this out of the goodness of his heart, but that's probably against his religion.
I want to let Brendan get in on this because he's been trying to talk a couple of times, and us loudmouths have been stepping on him, and I apologize, Brendan.
You guys we got good mind lock because I was going to make the point about going back to 1980, and when you think about it in that context, the idea of disengaging from this. I mean, it's folly to think, no pun intended, to think that this wasn't going to be a mess. And it harkens back a lot to my experience in at least local government, that you got a hefty problem and there's no tidy solutions. And when people come forth with anything but this opposition to whatever plan, it just rings hollow to me. As somebody in a position that has to make some of those decisions, I mean, to say anything but this, in terms of how we approach this it's just doesn't work.
I have a question for Saeed. Saeed,
yep.
The Taliban's telling people, no, don't leave the country. Just go to your job tomorrow. How desperate are they to have a functioning government where people know how to use the computers and run operations? What's going on there?
They're highly frightened by the brain drain possibility. They've seen how this affects other countries. In an ironical way, it demonstrates a level of humility. They are certainly not like Trump saying, I've got this. They recognize what are their weaknesses and their deficiencies, and they want to make sure that as they transition into governance outside a tribal model to be taken seriously, they want to have expertise. Now, we saw something like this happen in Iran after the revolution. Khomeini in 1979 realized, hey, you know what? I'm an imam. I'm not a technocratic administrator. So they co-opted and they brought in the secular Western educated elites. And then when their shelf life was no longer needed, they kind of showed them their walking papers. Right now in In Afghanistan, there's not walking papers, there's people with boarding passes who are already leaving. And so that's something that's, I think, really worried them. Because, look, for the Taliban, I think what people don't really understand is that they want stability in Afghanistan. They want to be taken seriously. They are being taken seriously right now by China and by Russia, both of whom are heavily invested in Afghanistan for their own reasons, especially China because of the Silk Road. China does not like instability. And if there is instability, China is going to consider shifting part of its Silk Road. So the Taliban needs to demonstrate to Beijing in particular that they can hold the rudder for the country. I wouldn't be surprised to see Western countries creating mischief in order to then find a way to impact China and serve as a bulwark against China.
Maybe it's China's turn to figure out that it's really difficult to try and control the entire world. Because that's the one thing Afghanistan will do. Will humble you quickly.
For the graveyard of empires, right?
Well,
everybody needs to listen to Tears for Fears.
Oh, there you go. I agree. All right. We should move on because there are other things that we need to get to. And like I said, I said at the beginning, I was glad that Brendan Walsh was here because, we're in the midst of this COVID thing right now. And because Governor Whitmer says, I'm not really going to put in any mask mandates, I'm not going to do that from the state level. Well, she's kicked it down to local governments and local school boards to make these decisions. And so Nancy and I have been talking all week about some fun things going on at some of these meetings. So Nancy and Michael Lucido and I put together a little video that I want to play just to give you what tireless public officials like Brendan have had to put up with for years. So watch this, everybody.
If you guys can't figure out by now the science is ridiculous, then you're probably driving around in your car with a mask on by yourself, and I can't help you at this point, nor do I want to.
The CDC is considering what is called the shielding approach to prevent COVID-19. It is a plan to shut down schools and to use them as camps to physically isolate men, women, and children.
It's never been about your health. It's never been about your health. It's about control and compliance. And let me tell you something. Go home tonight and take one of these spoons and put it on your vaccination spot. Guess what? It's going to stick to you. And pray and check in with yourself or whoever you answer to and ask, is this something normal? Do you have metal stick to you? Is this human? No. And guess what else? You take a black light flashlight and shine it on your veins, and you're now going to glow in the black light because guess what? You're no longer human. You're 2.0s, and we are afraid of you.
Is it going to end? Never. Our children will never see the freedoms that we enjoyed growing up. They are not even free to breathe fresh air. If God wanted us to cover our mouth and nose, he would have made us that way.
Well, guess what? You have a mask, so you're safe. Your kid has a mask on, so your kid's safe. Okay? So if your mask works, then you're safe.
Right.
No, if your mask works, you're safe. I'm asking you a question. Are you afraid of me right now?
You with that diaper on your face, if he farted right now, could you smell it? That's how stupid this is. There's hell coming, and I'm not doing it to threaten anybody. But there's a lot of good guys out there ready to do bad things soon.
Okay. Just you, country.
That's good stuff.
Do not laugh at that. That actually putting that
was a threat.
Clips, yes, it was.
That's
and
a
that
threat.
was also, we should also say that did not happen at a school board. That was at a county commissioners meeting in Ottawa County, Michigan.
Oh, the last one. And then the one before where the woman said God would have made us that way. That was Birmingham, Michigan school board meeting.
Yeah, that was exactly. And she's
but
but it's easy to laugh at these things. And I have been laughing at these things for my whole career. But that, when you put them all together like that, it's worrisome. These people,
it's America.
They all get the same vote that we do, and they are believing some truly insane apocalyptic crap. However, this is Brendan's area of expertise. I'll yield the floor.
I mean, but Brendan, it is one of those things like the level of discourse at school board meetings, city council meetings around the country has dropped to really, really awful levels. And I'm guessing that right now you're probably somewhat thankful that you're not dealing with the Grosse Pointe Public School Board.
I mean, but in my time, I mean, the issues were very similar. And I think one of the things that's different now is that, when I started on in local government, school management or board management, you just didn't have the proliferation of the issues. They're so broad, they're literally broadcast now. They didn't used to be that way. And now there's just access to just enough information to give people, their rightful right to participate in the dialogue. But it's, the local politics is really nasty, and it's really personal, and it's people that don't have anything to lose that are, the first in line at the microphone and just, throwing daggers like the montage just showed. It's a tough scene right now. In Grosse Pointe, recently a school board member walked off the stage apparently after a rant of a new school board member who's more on the Trump side of things, shall we say?
Yeah, I was watching the Birmingham meeting where the guy did the Zig Heil and all that, and one parent after another was like, there are no studies that show masks have any impact. There's nothing. Please show us something. And finally, a doctor wearing a mask gets up and says, I'm a doctor. And he says, I'll tell you all the studies and I'll share them with you. And he started firing off one study after another involving schools and how it's massive impacted the thing. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's people are very selective what they're finding on the internet, and they're running with it. And if it matches up to their beliefs, then it's true.
Yeah. Somebody once told me, I was talking to somebody once, this is years and years ago, I was doing an interview about sexual assailants and pornography. And it was, rapists and pornogaphy. And they said something like, the danger of pornography, and this was pre-internet porn, so it was, something that you had to work a little harder to get, is that it tells somebody who is who is inclined toward criminal sexual behavior that they're not alone, that there are other people who share that affinity, and it bolsters their resolve to do this stuff because they think that I'm not one pervert. I've got company, and there are other people that are like us. We're just misunderstood. It's like these people that join the man boy love association sorts of things. And I think that's the same thing has happened with the internet has done the same thing around these issues too. It's like, these people would have been embarrassed to yell and scream like that at a public meeting, but they're emboldened, as we like to say.
Well, for me, though, I'm watching these people freak out about mask mandates, right? And trying to liken this to somehow, Nazi Germany or suggesting that their freedoms are being taken away. These are the same people that don't seem to understand why, when we have an armed military presence in somebody else's country, that they might somewhat resent the fact that they do not have real freedom. That is somebody who actually needs to be worried about creeping authoritarianism. We don't have an occupying army in this country with guns pointed at us just in case we might be terrorists in our own country. I mean, this is the kind of thing. We're worried about masks here in this country as if somehow this is somehow an impingement on our freedom, yet we seem to be so willing to basically deny others that same freedom under the guise of getting them towards freedom someday. It seems to be incongruous.
Mm-hmm. True. So
somebody just
well, yeah. I mean, I'm heartened by Nancy saying over her career, she's seen people sort of act crazy, and I think about over my career, whether it was a congressional hearing in Congress or a school board meeting in Detroit back in the 90s, where you had people walk up saying crazy stuff, and it was that school board meeting was the place, seemed like one of the last places where people could have contact with their government to have their voices heard, even though the issue might not relate particularly to the education of children. And here, I mean, I agree with you. I see that, the crazies, are going on, and we get to see more of that now because there are cameras everywhere. You know what I mean? But
School board meetings.
there's got to be a way to put these kind of things in perspective and to sort of mitigate the nonsense that people are saying. To me, it's just not enough for school board members or city council people to stay there and listen to what folks are saying without responding and trying to provide an answer and put things in context. And I think they're just allowed to rant, into the wind, and we just get to see the result of that.
I covered way back. I mean, a totally different issue in 1978. I was working at the Spinal Column newspaper in Union Lake. I was covering a West Bloomfield school board meeting, and parents were just going crazy. And the funny thing, it was about redistricting and bringing the students from Kego Harbor together with the West Bloomfield students.
You can't have that.
And the West Bloomfield parents were like, "Oh my God, this is crazy. My child," West Bloomfield parents said, "my child is mixing with the Kego Harbor kids, and now instead of wanting to go to college, he wants to join the military. This is a shanda." I mean, it was so funny, man. But it's like, it brings out the emotion because people are fighting for their kids. They're willing to do anything. They'll go to the wall. They'll go crazy over it.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, interestingly enough, Wayne County is considering a county-wide mask mandate for the schools. And that's something that I think they're going to vote on later today, possibly, which would be interesting to see if again, they take some of the pressure off of the governor's office by actually mandating that this is done, and take pressure off of local officials for having to make a very, very unpopular choice. I'm
surprised that Wayne County Executive Warren Evans has not done this yet, when you saw the Oakland County executive do it right away.
Yeah, right. And again, if there's a safe political position in this state, it is the Wayne County executive.
Absolutely.
If you are a Democrat, you're in pretty good shape there. So it's interesting to see, but it's not that big of a problem. But when you watch some of the reaction to something as simple as masks, there's something deeper going on there. This mistrust over everything from the vaccines to, and then, I mean, who was it the other day? Ron DeSantis. I mean, he had 900 deaths in Florida yesterday, 900. And then he had the nerve to go on TV and said, well, Joe Biden said he was going to fix COVID, and he didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, that's because you've been telling people not to get vaxxed. You've been telling people not to wear masks, that everything needs to be opened up. You have some responsibility here.
I guess one of the things that I find so disheartening about this, besides the ranting at school board meetings, is just before we went on, I stumbled across a clip from Lauren Boebert, like 20 seconds or so, saying something
Colorado's
like,
finest.
Biden has to resign, and Nancy and AOC have to follow him, or some total bullshit. And I thought, if these were maybe one or two members of Congress who behaved like this, it would be one thing. But this is a trend that is growing. It's like they have married Trumpism to professional wrestling, to the Real Housewives, and reality TV, and think that is the way you do this job. And, policy making is serious business. And to see these folks acting like this, and it's not just them. I mean, I've seen a couple clips of people who are now running for open positions or running in primaries against incumbents who are acting the same way. It's like somewhere, even Kristen Sinema seems to see politics as just like a stepping stone to a much higher paying career in, reality TV or talking headism or whatever. So.
She was sporting a really cool hair color the other day. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh God, I know she's a big disappointment. Anyway,
well, that's another story for another day. But I mean, look, COVID, this Delta variant is no small deal. I mean, it's huge. They're now saying, the city of Detroit announced yesterday, by the way, that anybody that I believe is 6 months out from their first shot is going to be eligible for a booster in the city of Detroit, which I think is a great service that they're doing. As soon as I'm eligible to get it, I'm going to get it. I don't think my DNA has been altered. I'm pretty darn sure that I don't glow in the dark, and I'm not magnetic. I guarantee you that. I am not magnetic. Here, watch. Let's see. I don't have anything metal anymore. It's
because it's all stuck to your ass. Come on.
Very good. Very good.
There's no delay on here. You know?
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay.
I was going to say, it's interesting with the policies that are coming out of CDC and NIH and all that, and people get mad and they say, well, you told us not to wear a mask. Now you're telling us to wear a mask. And we're dealing with, what do they call it? A novel coronavirus. We're evolving. We're figuring out, yes, okay, the numbers are going way down. Don't wear a mask. Whoa, the numbers are going back up. Wear a mask. It doesn't seem that illogical that we keep changing as the thing goes along and it evolves. You know?
But there's such fear of this that somehow this vaccine, which has been injected into millions and millions of people around the world, has not been tested, even though it got full approval this week. So there's one excuse gone for not getting it. But there are a lot of people that are still saying, I'm afraid to get this. It's untested, but I am willing to take horse dewormer. And this ivermectin thing is growing. I went down a Facebook group rabbit hole for people who are talking about what they call Ivy now online. And they say, I identify as a horse. So because they don't want to get flagged by Facebook for putting false information. So they're talking about their horses and all this kind of stuff and what the proper dosage is to take. And there are people saying, oh, you just take gelatin tablets and fill up the paste for the horses and put it in these little tablets and eat that. And people are willing to do this rather than take the vaccine. And it's just,
do you know what my favorite posts from those groups are? It's like, I shit my pants in the grocery store this morning.
Is that normal?
Oh yeah,
is that normal? No, it is not. It is not normal. And I mean,
I blame the Russians, who I believe are still hard at work trying to destabilize our country.
Oh, I think so.
Or amplifying this crap.
Well,
I used to have a horse. And I saw the vet give that wormer to him once, and I got to tell you, man, there was nothing about that appealed to me. But
and that's the whole thing. It's getting rid of parasites, intestinal parasites, which means it's pretty much going to flush your system. It's going to make your colonoscopy prep look like a mild day. So, I mean, it's just not good for you.
I just got back from Moab, and I was doing some horseback riding, and I actually fell off my horse. And I'm pretty convinced that the horse held it against me that I'd only taken Moderna and not the dewormer. So it explains everything.
But I mean, it seems to me, though, that we are starting to see a little bit of sanity emerge on the issue of the vaccines. We're seeing high numbers of people trying to get it. And unfortunately, we're seeing horrific stories from people who are on their deathbed holding up signs saying, just get the damn shot. To the woman who came home from the hospital. She'd been there for a week and a half with COVID, came home and her husband was dead in the house because he had COVID, but didn't go to the hospital. Just stories like that, I think, are going to change people's minds. Getting back to school is going to do it as well.
I saw ABC News the other night. A woman is standing over her husband who's unconscious. He's got COVID. She's all distraught. She had COVID. She said, it's not that I'm against the vaccine. She says, I had 3 appointments, but I canceled each one because I was just too busy. And I want to say, you probably weren't too busy to go to the Olive Garden. You can go. You can do that,
And that's
priorities.
That's what's going to get us there. All right.
I think if Amazon announces that in order to order anything, you need to be vaccinated, people will vaccinate.
You bet.
And you see GM just yesterday talked about potentially mandating the.
Well, and it's happening in more and more places. And people are eventually just getting it.
Charge you an extra $200 a month on your health insurance if you work for Delta and you're unvaccinated.
Hey, they do it to smokers. So,
exactly. So
if you're going to be a high risk, then they have a right to try to reclaim some of that.
I'm struggling here to try and find a way to use Cartesian the way that the professor did in the last segment. I'm trying to see if there's like a way to slip that in there. I've been looking up the word and, ontological dualism of 2 finite substances and the mind and, and all this stuff. And I just can't get there.
I love you, Greg.
I posted on Facebook the other day saying, look, if there's some insurance companies that will not pay out a claim if you had your car unlocked and it got broken into or stolen. And I was saying, why the insurance companies cannot do the same and say, look, if you did not get vaccinated, then your insurance coverage isn't going to cover any of your treatment in the hospital.
Well, I just, before we move on,
because we're not barbarians, Al. That's why.
But I do want to mention Greg Bowens, our guest today, wrote a great piece this week on Deadline Detroit about vaccine hesitancy in the Black community, especially amongst the Nation of Islam. But I thought that was a pretty good piece that you had up there, and I thought it was informative to get people to understand why a lot of people are still freaked out and resistant to this kind of thing. So we shall see, and it's a good read, and I just wanted to acknowledge Greg's piece this week. All right. We typically wait till the end of the show to do Schmucks of the Week, but Brendan's got one for us, and this is something that was going to come up as a subject anyway, so I'm going to let Brendan take it away right now.
I had mentioned about the kind of the collective boobism of the Detroit City Council and their reimmersion into the mucky swamp, and it's just amazing. After all, I use the term loosely, we've been through with the city council, to see this happening again. It's horrible to see.
Yeah, I think great nominations because this all, and if the reporting is right on this, and the mayor acknowledged it yesterday that he thinks that there is some merit to the reporting that came out suggesting that this is indeed related to Gasper Fiore and the Boulevard and Trumble Towing Company and towing contracts in the city.
Who's a gross pointer, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yes, he is. He lives
say
in
that.
The shores.
But, it's just, I was sad to see this happen once again, because I know everybody who has been implicated thus far in this one, just about. And I'm disappointed. I'm very, very disappointed in some people. And again, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. I get that. But if the FBI is raiding your stuff without your knowledge because they're worried that you might cover something up, that's usually a sign that they already have a lot of stuff and they just need to corroborate it. It's not looking good for Janae Ayers at this point in time, and it's certainly not looking good. Just all of a sudden, Scott Benson. I don't know what it is about towing companies, but why? Why is this the murky swamp?
Because there's so much, there's so much money involved. There's, it's just so lucrative. I mean, people are getting schmears here and there. The police department, the city council. It's just so ripe for corruption. It's interesting.
Is a great, it's a big investment, but I think it's also something that really dollars up on the hoof, as they say in the cattle.
Oh yeah,
right. We should get one as a side thing for Deadline Detroit.
When I was doing census work last summer, I remember wandering into this neighborhood that was pretty low income, and there were at least 2, maybe 3 houses that had kind of unmarked tow trucks parked in the driveway or along the curb there. And I got the feeling, and I was talking to somebody who kind of knows that economy a little better than me, and he said, yeah, they probably go out and they hook cars off the street. It's just a way to steal them without necessarily causing too much attention, or you can essentially kidnap them and hold them for ransom.
Well, the daily, just to tow them and put them in a tow yard, and there's a daily accumulation.
Oh God!
And people suddenly a month later go, "Oh my God, I found my car," and they owe a month's worth of whatever, thousands of dollars.
What also is quite lucrative is getting those contracts with the city when you actually have the legal right to tow somebody. So when the police call a contractor to tow the car, that's the whole thing, because that happens all the time. You get somebody who's double parked or parked in front of a fire hydrant, whatever, and eventually they'll tow that car away. And also the private industry, anybody that's got a private lot that's got somebody parked in there illegally, those guys are just circling the neighborhood waiting for them to get that call. They will have that thing out of there in less than 5 minutes. Right. It'll be up on the back of a truck or gone. And then basically you're out of luck. I remember the McDonald's in Midtown got in some trouble because, somebody parks in that parking lot. They walk across the street to get something and they're going to go to McDonald's. But as soon as they see them go across the street, that car is out. Right. And that costs somebody a lot of money. So, I mean, there is a ton of cash involved in it, but it seems that there has been a huge resistance to changing the system for a long time as well. And Greg, I mean, this stuff goes back to, this goes back to the Coleman Young administration. I mean, towing stuff is not new in the city.
It's not new in any city. You ever been to New York? I mean, I'm
sure it's awful.
I mean, I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think it's fair to paint the entire city council with that broad brush. I don't know.
Well, there's 4 of them right now.
Quite a few.
So that means there are 5 more left. Brenda Jones, Mary Sheffield, James Tate, Lopez.
A big percentage.
And, it could be a big percentage, but if somebody says the media sucks, and and they're slamming you, because somebody lied at the Wall Street Journal about a story that they wrote and say, see, that's a great example of how it happens everywhere, including Deadline Detroit, I don't think that we would appreciate it. You know, so I mean, I get the fun, I get the funning on it and the joking on it, but I'm not sure that Brenda Jones, who's been there for 3-4 terms now, really deserves to be painted with that brush.
But if we look at the council, we're going to have Spivey is scheduled to plea on September 28th. So we're going to have 2 empty seats from 2 convicted felons. Then we have 2 other people who are under criminal investigation. That's almost half the council. It's not an aberration. It's not 1 council member. It's not 2 council members. And the fact is that Gabe Leland sat on that council for 3 years, and the council allowed him to vote on contracts while he's under indictment for bribery. And then the hardening thing is that Spivey, who is under indictment or charged with bribery, is going to be removed fairly quickly. I mean, part of the Gabe Leland thing had to do with COVID. Some of it had to do with the complications in the case, but that's not the council's business. The legality, they should have done something to address that and say, you can't vote on these contracts. But Gabe Leland continued to operate as a member in good standing on there. And that really says something about, as a resident in the city of Detroit, I mean, look, to see half the council under a cloud like that, it's like, it's more than an aberration.
Yeah, but you know what? Every year somebody in Congress gets indicted for something and
out of 435,
if 200
but they're still able to serve up until the point they take a plea or they're convicted. So I don't know what's up with this double standard, Lingle. I don't get it.
All of them. Well, we should have higher standards in Congress. We should have a standard. Everyone, I don't care who they are, black or white.
Nah, man, you're just protecting the white boys, man. That's all.
I think it was a shame that Gabe Leland was on, and a Jewish guy, Finally, we hadn't had somebody Jewish on there for so long, and here it is. A Shonda to the race, but everyone should be held to high standards, and the high standards should not be set by Congress. And 1 member out of 435 who's under indictment is going to be a lot different than half the council is.
I do want to talk about this for just a second, though, because the only person on council that actually made a comment yesterday was Raquel Castaneda Lopez, who actually put out a statement who said that, we don't get any training when we get this job. We don't get any training. We should have training in the ethics policies and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, there's training. Then you just know what you're not supposed to do. I mean, does anybody really think that these people didn't know what they were doing was improper if indeed they come down and they get to it? I mean, I think they knew that what they were doing was maybe a little shady. I'm not sure training is enough. And
although, I get what she's saying. Did something shady when she hasn't even been indicted or charged or anything.
I didn't say her.
But you said all these people had to know. Do you mean the people that have, Gabe Leland, and you're going back to Kay Everett, or
let's go back. Let's go back as far as we want. If you want to go back to Lonnie Bates, we can do that. If you want to go back to, any of these people that were doing things illegal in the city, and there has been a long history of bad behavior in the city of Detroit government. That's just it's true.
Which is why we ended up with districts in the first place.
But
when you want to go back 100 years.
Is training something that would make a difference? I mean, because you can't just sit there and go, oh, I was never trained about what was right and wrong in terms of taking campaign contributions.
Right.
You know what? Let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is that we switched to districts. And when we switched to districts, the ability to get on council, the bar got low in terms of what you needed to do, the resources you needed to have to get on council. Now, Lonnie Bates and Monica and Kay notwithstanding, but generally to get on council, you would have to have some serious experience. You would already have to know how to navigate, the waters and what to do and what not to do. And so we've got a lot of new people, a lot of new political people on the council, and I think that it makes it a little more difficult for them.
I think it would not be a bad idea that every year that a lawyer, an ethicist or whatever, comes in and talks. The FBI sends somebody over and there's a little seminar and says, here's what is illegal. Here was clearly, even if you're taking money, even if it's not an immediate quid pro quo, you cannot, as a politician, take money. And that's, Spivey is, even though he's going to plead guilty, I mean, originally his claim was, hey, I was just taking money. I wasn't offering a quid pro quo, a vote. But when you're taking money from an industry that you're voting on, it's, on the side, it's not it's secretly taking money, then it's illegal. Pretty obvious.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay.
No, real quick. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to say, you want to talk about the culture and city council and making them the schmuck of the week, all of them, but if we go back, we can talk about the culture, the overarching culture in this metropolitan region. When you had the leading businessmen giving a mayor money to step down. Now, to me, how is that different? I mean, they did it in front of everybody, like, here, take all this money and leave the mayor's office with Kwame, and that was okay.
Hey, let's be clear, my schmuck of the week wasn't the entire city council, but the bad actors who are now surfacing. So
okay.
Well, anyway,
thank you for the clarification, because Craig Polly just ran away with it.
Oh, stop it! I did not.
But I'll say this, and to go a little bit further, is that the council has been silent even after charges have been. When Gabe Leland was going to plead guilty, after he pleaded guilty, there's nothing. They just say, "Hey, we're not going to say anything about this." There's just the silence is deafening, and it's I don't know.
Well, like I said, I'm disappointed because I knew both of these people. I know both of these people fairly well. I've worked well with them in the past. I'm friends with them, and I'm sad to see this happen. And I hope that there is nothing to this. I'm not convinced that that's the case, but I really hope that I am wrong. I would like to see that because I think it's important for the health of the community, the health of the city, and people's faith in governance that this stuff is done properly. And that's all I want, because I don't want to see anybody go to jail. I don't like that. It's not good. I hope that there's nothing there and that this is a fishing expedition. I hope.
Yeah, all right. Me too. I agree.
We've got to go on here real quick. But I did, before we get to Schmuck of the Week, I did want to mention Judge Linda Parker and her ruling against the attorneys that brought the Kraken lawsuit in the state of Michigan. I've read much of this ruling, and it is a judicial smackdown like I haven't seen in a long time. She admonished these attorneys for bringing what she called the stupidest and frivolous arguments she's ever seen, for barely doing any vetting of the affidavits that they were putting forward, and in many cases knowing that they were incorrect and hearsay and inadmissible in any way, shape, or form. Nancy, you're shaking your head. I mean,
it's pro wrestling again.
Sanctioned.
This is the equivalent of pro wrestling. It's like, just throw that shit on the wall and see if any of it sticks. I mean, it was complete posturing. I don't want to insult Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood et al. By thinking that they actually believed this crap. They knew it was bullshit because they presumably have enough IQ points to enable them to tie their shoes in the morning. But I mean, this to me was absolutely deserved. And I think that the nature of her sanction, which is to send them back to like kindergarten, law school kindergarten, is hilarious.
Yeah. I know Lynn Wood.
Yeah, I know. We've heard you.
Yeah.
Interviewed him for the Sean Levy thing.
No, but he's a very bright guy.
Yeah, I mean,
but he went off the deep end at some point with this whole Trump thing, and it's like Sidney Powell, I don't know, but I mean, these were prominent attorneys, and how they just suddenly got into the Jimmy Jones Kool-Aid drinking.
Giuliani was the U.S. attorney in the most high-profile U.S. attorney's office in the country.
Right.
You know, and he stepped off the path. So there you go.
Well, there are some people that are way smarter than me on this line right now, and I would just like to say that to me, it seems like they were able to do this because there has been no penalty for lying in the public square for a long time.
Yes.
Trump did it every day. We accepted it. Just said, oh, he's exaggerating. You know, don't take him seriously. Don't take him seriously, but not literally. You know, and all that stuff. And this seeped into the court. with these filings, and they're saying no more. We're not going to do that.
The pain in the wallet is something that they will definitely feel, because it's going to happen in other places where they brought these lawsuits. And then when the Dominion suits come in, which they're all facing as well, that's going to be the one where the big bucks come in.
It's going to be
all right. We've got about 5 minutes left.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
Right. Well, we already got Brendan Walsh's Schmuck of the Week nominee, but he's allowed to comment on the other ones that come in. So who would like to go first this week? Nancy Derringer wants to go first.
All right.
I always appreciate your enthusiasm, Nancy.
And don't say Lynn Wood.
I know. Back when people cared about who Time Magazine's Person of the Year was, occasionally it was a big news event at the end of the year, and occasionally they would dispense with like a single individual, and they would go with like a group or something. I remember when the PC was the person of the year. I'm going with the COVID schmucks this week, because I have two here. One was offered this morning by Brendan's wife Lynn, and it was Caleb Wallace, who was a very strong in Texas. He's a very strong anti-mask, anti-vaccine, COVID activist who now has COVID himself, is on a ventilator in Texas, and lucky him that he was able to get one. And he's 30 years old, 3 children. He's probably going out for good, and his wife has a GoFundMe. So there's that guy. But I think
and they're running out of oxygen in Texas, by the way, too.
I know,
oxygen.
Florida. Yeah, I've heard that too. But I think the crown really has to go to Chris Johansson, who is a state representative in Maine, whose wife died of COVID, and days later was appearing at an anti-mask, anti-vaccine rally, and compared the state's governor to a Nazi to Dr. Mengele. So that is kind of like, that is the pièce de résistance.
Man, you know what? People, read a freaking book about the Nazis, please.
Yeah, before you do that.
Really?
Yeah.
Watch a movie.
All right, Nancy's got hers out there. Who wants to go
I got
next?
one.
All right, go ahead, Greg.
All right. My Schmuck of the Week is a man who is obviously engaging in the Cartesian mindset.
Hell yeah.
That is Representative Peter Meyer, who I have the split thing with him because I admire him in some ways in trying to stand up for our democracy. But the stunt that he pulled by going to Afghanistan with another guy completely off the books to me was totally irresponsible. Had he went there and ran afoul of ISIS or somebody like that and got captured, it would have been horrendous.
He could have been in that crowd in the suicide bombers. He could have been standing on the other side of the fence, observing the crowd.
And you see what you see what he said on the way. He says, "Look, I made sure I didn't take anyone's seat on the way back. Like there weren't thousands of people outside the airport waiting to get on the seat." He's like, "I didn't take any seat from anyone."
And the other thing is that is to go off on his own and do that, without the protection or the knowledge of the United States government is a terrible thing. He put himself in harm's way. He used up resources. And at the end of the day, his thought that, well, if he would have left in May or April, then this all would have worked out better is, what makes me think of the Cartesian mindset, that somehow you are being able to divine, how things would have worked out had we just decided to leave earlier. No, and that's the result of your trip. We didn't need you to go there to tell us that things are fucked up. We can see that.
Very disappointed in Michigan's hot ginger. So
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse my French. I apologize. I didn't mean to.
Oh, jeez. All right.
I didn't mean to do a Nancy.
All right. Already broke the rated E barrier.
All right. So that's actually a good one, Greg, and I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to talk about that earlier, but I'm glad we got a mention in on it today. Alan Lengel, who you got?
I've got a few, but my top one is Paul Markham, the tennis instructor who did the Zig Heil at the Birmingham School Board in objection to the masking policy. He was fired from he was a tennis instructor at a West Bloomfield club. And, I can't imagine a lot of people coming in, new parents saying, hey, I want to give my kid lessons. They say, is there any particular teacher you want? Yeah, well, what about the guy who did the Zig Heil? I'll take him. So it wasn't
know your
last
audience,
long.
right?
Yeah, it wasn't going to last long in the West Bloomfield thing. But I was also, Ron DeSantis, I think, is just such an obvious schmuck, just week after week. And the other one was, and I know I'll mispronounce his name wrong, and Saeed could probably help me out, was a Taliban spokesman. I'll just pronounce his last name, Mujahid Zabihullah Mujahid, who said, Bin Laden, what? Was September 11th? What are you talking about? There's no evidence. I thought it was very Trumpian-like, and he did it very convincingly. But anyways.
All right, very good. Saeed, do you have a nominee? You came in late. I only asked you late last night. I figured you'd come up with something.
No problem. There's always schmucks around. So yeah, Greg, don't be too hard on Pete Meyer. I think he was scouting for a location of a new Meyer superstar. Well, first of all, let me start with a mensch of the week. Charlie Watts, dearly departed from the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah.
As far as the schmuck of the week, there are plenty, but I'm going to stick with the Afghan tag by saying former President Ashraf Ghani, who, when the going got tough, got on an airplane with $169 million and fled to Dushanbe, Tajikistan, before ending up in the UAE, under the pretext that he was trying to avoid bloodshed, which now we realize was really only his own. He says he's going to return to the country. It seems doubtful at this time because, well, I guess he's having trouble landing at Kabul airport.
Oh, man. No, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
I think that was that, when the military saw that, they're like, what the heck am I doing? I'm not fighting against these guys. Clearly, the Afghan government was a sham. Did not work the way that they wanted.
They were just getting paid, man. They were just getting paid. That's one of the things people talk about,
All right, I've got one non-Afghanistan related. This one is election related, though. My schmuck of the week is Jacob Wohl and Jack Berkman. Now, these are the two conservative activists who did the robocalls to Detroit voters. Tell them, well, hey, if you go to vote, if you go to register, if you vote by mail, can't do that because they're going to use that against you to come after you for outstanding child support,
using
bills
a
that you
black actress so
Black
that it
actress to
sounded
do it.
as though it was coming from somebody of the same race.
Well, the great thing about them, these two schmucks, is that they got caught. And now the Federal Communications Commission is proposing a $5.1 million fine against these two guys for trying to do this. So next time somebody says that they're trying to rig an election, this is the kind of stuff that is being done to try to rig elections, trying to get you not to show up to vote, to make it more difficult for people to vote. That's the real stuff that is happening when it comes to rigging elections, not fraud at the ballot box, not some voting machine connected up to Venezuela and Russia. That's not what is going on. It is people like these two jackasses that are trying to somehow confuse people and get them to not show up because they know that if people show up in big numbers to vote, their person's going to lose.
We're still waiting for Arizona for the audit.
Yeah. Oh, wait. And you know why the audit is delayed? Because one of the dudes in charge of Cyber Ninjas got COVID. So there you go.
Those two, though, are such bumbling idiots.
Of course they are.
It's almost like I suspect that at some point they're going to rip off the mask and say this has all been some kind of avant-garde performance art piece.
Well, $5.1 million fine is a very, very difficult lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And
tried
enjoy.
to convince a press conference that some hunky Marine had a S&M affair with Elizabeth Warren.
I remember that. Yeah, swell guys. All right,
Do you think they're going to collect? Do you think they're going to collect?
I think
you think those guys are good for that $5 million?
I think they're going to have to come up with something. And it's just like a good faith effort, and it's going to hurt. They're going to have to pay something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap it up here. I want to thank my guests today. Brendan Walsh, thank you very, very much. We appreciate, again, your service to your community as being a school board member that's not a small deal, especially in this day and age. These are difficult things to do. Greg Bowens, thank you as always for being here. Keep up the good fight over in Grosse Pointe. We love what you're trying to do over there. Saeed Khan, thank you for being on last minute. Always appreciate that, and we'll have you back as events warrant in the Middle East. Thanks as always to Nancy Derringer and Alan Lengel of Deadline Detroit for being with us. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast, helping with that little video treat we gave you earlier in the show today. And also thanks to our sponsor, Lynette's Shrimp House in Highland Park. We could not do this without them, and we appreciate it very, very much. And thanks, of course, to all of you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. It looks like we might get a break in the heat in the next couple of days. We shall see, and let's hope for that. In the meantime, Alan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.